This is a story of a very brave person, former skeptic, who used to believe that logic, data, and hard work were the only things that could solve any problem.
When I left his office, the last thing he said to me, "Do you got somewhere you can go where they can take care of you until you die?" And I was still in my 20s.
This is a story of a long battle and a very dark night of the soul.
I also lost my education and my career. I had spent the gigantic amount of my life and expense to be a software engineer, and that was ripped away from me forever. I lost my lifelong best friend. I really thought my life was over.
This is a story where true miraculous magic was found.
You had told me 30 years ago that I would be teaching energy healing and spiritual seminars. I would have laughed at you.
You're so very welcome to this episode where science meets spirit. I'm Sarah, a quantum healer, mindfulness guide, life coach and teacher, and I'd like to give the warmest of welcomes to Brent Micheal Philips, the founder of the ADT method, a healing breakthrough which entails conscious engineering and decoding the subconscious mind. ADT has helped thousands release trauma, heal pain, and unlock success through measurable energetic shifts. Hello, Brent.
How you doing?
Well, you're very welcome onto the podcast. Thank you so much for taking the time to come today. It sounds like you've had a journey.
Geez. Oh, yeah. Well, it's funny that you had told me 30 years ago that I would be teaching energy healing and spiritual seminars. I would have laughed at you. It would have seemed ridiculous because this was never part of my master plan.
Yeah.
Is growing up, I love video games and I wanted to be a video game developer. So that was my original trajectory in life. And, things did okay for a little while. I went to college at MIT, discovered the internet, and that was huge because it was a big passion. I'm like, wow, this internet thing is really going to change the world,
Mm-hmm.
And when I was in grad school at MIT, that's when the internet boom hit. And I thought, wow, this is kind of the gold rush of my generation. And like a lot of people, I left grad school and moved to California and recruited my lifelong best friend because we thought we were going to create tech startups and really be a force in the world. And it's kind of funny that looking back, did you know the very first website I ever built in my life was the website for the launch of the Sony PlayStation? That was in the summer of 1995. So things got off to a pretty good start. A year later, I found myself living in Southern California and I had 15 people working for me building websites. It was really cool. And we started a second company to make online games because that was really our passion. And again, it went okay for a little while, but it started to fall apart for me because I was just working myself to death. Because when I was young, I wanted to be successful more than anything. And I was willing to pay almost any price. And so it was a couple of years with the startups of, it really was 100-hour work weeks. That's no exaggeration. I was there early every morning, all day, all night, 7 days a week, no holidays, no weekends, no vacations, nothing like that. It was just work, eat, and sleep. And after a couple of years of this, my body started to break down.
Mm-hmm.
I started to have increasingly severe pain. And, I think like a lot of people, especially when you're young, you start to have some pain or you're sick. You don't worry too much. You just go to the doctor, right? And then they'll take care of it. And that's what I expected. But the doctors couldn't help me. And long story short, I spent, years in physical therapy and vocational rehab and all these things. And they kept expecting me to get better, but I didn't. I got worse. And it was really frustrating. And after years of physical therapy, Finally, I got in to see the head doctor at the Joe Clinic, which is one of the top physical therapy clinics in the world. And I was so excited because my pain was getting so bad. I had gone from like 100 hours a week to 80 to 60 to 40 to, but at this point in 1998, I was working maybe 20 hours a week. And that took a lot of rehab and recovery time too. And I really thought, hey, this doctor will fix me and I'll get my life back and things will get back on track. Well, what I didn't expect was I went in to see him and he's there sitting behind the desk, with all my medical records in front of him. And he just like looks at me and says, well, I'm sorry, son, but there's nothing I or any doctor can do here. You're always going to be in pain and you'll never be able to go back to work. And I was dumbfounded because that's not what I expected, right?
Mm-hmm.
I expected he'd have some new treatment or a surgery or a rehab or something that would help me. But no, it was just, sorry, you're an impossible case. And what I remember was when I left his office, the last thing he said to me, he said, son, do you got somewhere you can go where they can take care of you until you die? And I was still in my 20s.
Mm-hmm.
So, again, I was in my 20s and he literally sent me home to die.
Wow.
Put me on, declared me what they call PNS, permanent and stationary, which basically means don't bother to treat this guy. It's a waste of your time. He'll never get better. And I was recommended for permanent lifetime disability in my 20s. And that alone was devastating, but that was just the beginning of the fall. I remember when I went to go tell my best friend and business partner, I expected him to be all, hey, Brent, I got your back. We'll get through it together, right? Something supportive and encouraging, right? Because it had always been that way up to that point. I mean, we were close like brothers. When I was at MIT, we talked on the phone every single day for 6 years. I mean, that's why I say we were really close like brothers. But he just said, well, if you can't work anymore, then you have no place here. And so I got fired at my position at both the companies I had founded.
Mm-hmm.
And he turned around, he lied to me, forged documents, and sold the website company for millions of dollars behind my back. And I was left with nothing. I had one, I was suffering with pretty soul-crushing chronic pain. I had to move in with my parents because I was in so much pain. There were a lot of days I had trouble just getting dressed or cutting my food, just very basic life things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that was awful. But it was a lot worse than just having pain. I also lost my education and my career. And let me tell you, MIT ain't cheap, even back in the 80s and 90s. I had spent the gigantic amount of my life and expense to be a software engineer. And that was ripped away from me forever. When I was still in my 20s, and I didn't expect that. And on top of that, I learned a little while later, the reason he did it was I found out he had been secretly dating the woman that I was crazy in love with. And she was two-timing me with him. And, on top of all that, let's also not forget I lost my lifelong best friend. So it was, as they call it, a dark night of the soul.
The darkest.
It was awful that I really thought my life was over. And for a little while, it was just, I could barely get through the day. I was day drinking, I was using drugs, I was suicidal, again, I think all totally understandable given what I was going through. But I was very lucky that I had a friend of mine say, hey, Brent, don't just piss your life away. You need to try positive thinking. And they said, hey, you know what? When life's really got you down and you don't know what to do, that's when you really need positive thinking. So I gave it a shot. And long story short, for about 6 months, I became this kind of gung-ho positive thinking warrior. I went to some weekend seminars and I'd jump on the stage and shout out how I was going to be rich and all this crazy stuff, right? And, I remember I made my first vision board. I put power words on my walls all over my apartment. It was crazy. And I hoped that things would get better, but they didn't. And nowadays we call it the law of attraction. But back in the 90s, we called it positive thinking, and it's really the same stuff, right? Think and Grow Rich and The Secret and, vision boards and mantras and all that. But it didn't help me. So I decided this is a bunch of nonsense and threw it all in the trash. Went back to being depressed. Again, I was very lucky not to blow up my life irretrievably, because I had another friend of mine turn me on to alternative medicine. And I remember she said, Brent, the doctors don't know everything. There are other treatments out there. And, basically told me, don't give up yet. You have to try the alternative stuff. It might work better for you, right? And I was desperate, so I figured, what the heck, right? And so I started doing all kinds of alternative medicine. I started getting acupuncture, and I was doing herbal cleanses, and, I changed my diet, and I saw homeopaths and osteopaths and chiropractors, and, I used magnets and vibration machines. And I could go on and on for hours and all this stuff, right? But long story short, for the next 5 years, I was trying to survive on disability and running around, running up a gigantic credit card debt doing alternative medicine. And it was even more difficult because my parents divorced and I had no place to live. So that was a whole nother level of financial strain. And it was really scary because, every month I watched my debt get bigger and bigger. And I didn't see any way out other than getting better and going back to engineering, right?
Mhm.
But it was the same story over and over. I was so frustrated. I'd find someone, they'd have a healing technique or a supplement or a cleanse or a diet or something, right? And over, they'd go, Brent, I'm so glad you found me. I know we can solve your problem. We can get you out of pain, right? So I'd spend a bunch of money, go deeper into debt, and then 3 months, 6 months later, nothing would happen. And over, this wasn't once or twice or 3 times, but dozens of times. I remember around the year 2001, someone had me put together a list of all the doctors I had seen. I had seen 53 different doctors in 3 years.
Wow.
All just trying to get better, right? So I say it wasn't just 1 or 2 things. It was like dozens of doctors, dozens of acupuncturists, just so many people. No one could help me. And I just had more and more pain. And it eventually, 5 years later, I volunteered for an experimental research surgery. And because someone had said, hey, Brent, I think this might help you. So I applied and talked to the doctor, and I was accepted. And I went and had the surgery. And as you can probably guess, if the surgery had cured me of all my pain, I would have just gone right back to coding, and I wouldn't be here, would I? Probably not, right? We never know, it didn't happen. But when I woke up from the surgery, my right arm was paralyzed at the elbow. And that was a whole nother level of disability. Because now it's one of those things, until it's happened to you, you don't realize how much you need 2 hands in life until you don't have one. There's so many things. For example, you try coming in from the grocery store with bags in one hand and also opening all the doors and unlocking everything with your keys. You can't do it with one hand. I'll challenge everyone listening. I want you to go floss your teeth with one hand tonight. Let me know how that goes, right?
Yeah.
Simple things, shaving, cutting my food. There were all these things I couldn't do. Pretty much my face was constantly dinged up with cutting myself shaving because I had to shave left-handed, which is not easy, right? So that was kind of the rock bottom. And it was funny that I remember it was right around the time I had the surgery. It was an old friend of my Aunt Lauren. Her name was Terry. And she had been on her own journey. And the short version of her story was she was a very successful financial professional. Wharton School MBA, super smart, right? Big job, made lots of money. And she got sick with black mold exposure. And it almost killed her. But she found this process of energy healing that truly saved her life. And I remember seeing her email one day. She said, hey, everyone, it's Terry. I want you to know that I'm quitting my job in finance. I'm going to be a full-time healer. And I thought she was nuts. I laughed out loud, right? I'm like, how stupid? Why would you do that, right? And I remember when my arm was paralyzed, it was a little over 5 months. And, the doctors tried all sorts of stuff. They shot me up with local anesthetic and tried to wrench my arm and it wouldn't go. They did a manipulation under anesthesia. They had me in a CPM machine. They had me sleep in special splints. I mean, on and on and on, all this stuff. Nothing worked, right? And I remember once a month, my aunt would call me and say, Brent, why don't you go see Terry and book a session? And I was like, that's a waste of time. It's stupid. It's not good. Nothing helps me, right? But, try this. And I'm like, yeah, I had done Reiki before. I mean, had it done to me, right? I had people do hands-on healing, like pranic healing. So I had done a little bit of energy healing, but it seemed pretty stupid and woo-woo. And so she'd call me once a month. Brent, did you see Terry? No. Why not? It's not going to help. I'll see her, right? And then I wouldn't. So this went on for 5 months. And finally, Lauren's like, Brent, go see Terry. Tell me what it's going to take. I'll even pay for it. And I'm like, okay, pay for it. Let me raise you. Take me out to dinner. And I'll go see Terry. And Lauren was like, fine, I'll pay for it and I'll take you out to dinner. I'm like, all right, I win. I just figured I got a free dinner, right? So I booked a session with Terry. And hilarious thing, this is a true story. I learned later I was her first professional client.
Wow.
How wild is that, right? I was her first client. And we had the session. And she asked me a lot of questions about my childhood and what had happened with my career and the loss of my friend and all the money I'd lost and all the depression I'd been through. And she had introduced me to muscle testing, which I had seen before. I'd done it a little bit as a way to check for subconscious blocks. And I have to admit, it was pretty interesting. But here's the thing. I was like, hey, lady, it's all well and good to talk about our feelings, right? But that's a waste of time. I'm here because I can't move my arm and I'm in pain, right? And honestly, I didn't see how talking about our feelings had anything to do with it. It's still, math, science, engineering guy, right? Like, if you can't show me the research, I'm not interested. And so we had the session and we got to the end. And I remember Terry saying, okay, we're going to do a healing on your arm now. And I laughed. I'm like, you and what army, right? And I remember she kind of went into a trance for a minute and her eyes closed. And I remember sitting on her couch and I'm just looking out the window thinking, well, what do I want to get for lunch on the way home, right? This was fun, but on to the next thing, right? I didn't expect anything to happen. And we were, 30, 40 seconds in. And there was this loud crack and pop in my arm. And it was, the way I would describe it is, we've all had the experience of our joints popping, right? But it was like that, like times 20 or 30. It was like, it wasn't just a crack, it was like a kaboom. It was like, and my whole body shook a little bit. I was like, whoa. And Terry must have heard it. Because to me, it sounded like a bomb went off, right? And went, kaboom. And I remember she opened her eyes and said, okay, let's try your arm. And I did. And I couldn't believe it. I could move my arm again.
Amazing.
And that was the legitimate, instantaneous miracle healing that hooked me. And I remember I was like, wow, it was an eye opener. I remember thinking, my gosh, I just experienced real magic, which was so important. Because remember, my goal in life, I wanted to be a video game developer. Why is that? Well, video games are a domain where magic is real. Right? You got wizards and you got space aliens, you got anything you want, right? Imagination is your only limiter. And I had experienced real life magic. And I said something to her like, wow, I don't know what just happened, but you got to teach me. And I went all in on learning this. But before I go any further, I do like to just call things out because I want everyone to be clear. I want to be honest here, right? I don't want people to take away the wrong message. So What did happen that day was with 1 hour of this energy healing process, which was so crazy because Terry didn't even touch me. It's all done with the mind. She's just sitting across the sofa, right? I'm there standing up doing my muscle test, and she's just saying, do this, do that. So there was no supplement. I didn't swallow anything. There was no tapping on my body. It was just two people talking across the room. And what happened was that my arm, after I had had that experimental surgery, I hadn't been able to move it for 5 months. It went crack, and I could move my arm again, just like the surgery never happened. So that was great. What did not happen that day was all my problems were not solved in an hour. It would have been nice if Brent experiences a miracle and all your problems are solved and live happily ever after. But this is reality, not a fairy tale, right? This is not a movie script. So all the pain and movement restrictions and depression and other issues I had did not heal instantly. So it's not like I was suddenly out of pain and doing backflips. But again, what did happen was my arm was paralyzed for 5 months. It went crack and I could move it again. But that basically took me back to where I was 5 months before. The rest of my issues didn't instantly heal. But here's the thing. With a lot more work, they started to. And I'm not saying that it takes years to recover, but it did for me. I started working with Terry. I did a private session every week. I took every class she taught. Wherever she was doing an event, I was there front and center. And it took really about 2 years, maybe 3, before I started to see some real progress in the underlying issues. So it was a lot of work. It was a lot of time. It was a lot of money, but I started to get better. And this was a big deal because remember, when I first, when the RSI first really started to get bad, it was 1996. And I had spent almost 3 years in conventional therapies trying to get better. Then the doctors gave up on me in 1998. And then I spent 5 years in alternative therapies, right? And I didn't get better. I just got worse. So it was actually quite remarkable to me that the first thing that happened with the healing was I stopped getting worse. But over time, I really started to get better. And again, I want to tell the truth. I wish there was one big session where I had a huge release and the heavens shook and, light shined upon me and I was healed. I wish it wasn't that simple. It was, a lot of practice, a lot of drilling, a lot of training. I would say it's not too different than if you wanted to learn to play guitar. That if you wanted to learn to guitar, there is no one seminar or weekend guitar workshop that turns you into a guitar master from zero. It doesn't work that way, right? The way it works is you buy a guitar, you find a guitar teacher, and you start practicing. If you practice regularly and you're willing to do the work, within months or years, you will be able to play guitar. And that's kind of what a message I want everyone to hear. That a lot of people wonder, gee, can I really achieve my goal? Can I really get out of pain? Can I really overcome this disease? For others, it might be trying to find love or a family or purpose or meaning. For others, it might be more about money, right? Maybe you're stuck in a dead-end job, a bad living situation, and you just can't imagine how you can do better. What I want to hear is pretty simple, that can you achieve your goal? Almost certainly. Now, there are some people that engage in magical thinking, right? If you think you're going to be the world's first trillionaire and then to evolve into a being of pure energy and become the supreme overlord of the galaxy, I would say, well, maybe that's a little ambitious, right? I don't think that's going to happen.
Just a quick interruption to say thank you so much for taking the time to watch this episode today. I appreciate every single one of you. Those of you who have been here since the beginning, and those of you who are new. I'd like to kindly ask if you could subscribe to the channel if you feel called, and if it's convenient for you, and if it's something that you'd like to do in support of the channel, please subscribe to the channel. I'd also love to hear your comments in the comments, and if these episodes have helped you in any way, or if it's something that you found insightful, I'd love to hear your comments and see your likes in support of the channel. Thank you so much again, with my whole heart, from my heart to yours. Now back to the episode.
But most of the regular life things that we want, we are all capable of them. Again, better health, better mental health, better mindset, making more money, having a bigger life, finding love, finding purpose, finding meaning. All these are achievable. But here's the question. The biggest question is not, can you get there? The question is, are you going to give up before you do? And that's so important. That like a lot of people, because I did experience a miracle in my first real energy healing session, I kind of got into magical thinking too, and thought, well, gee, let me just have 4 more sessions and I'll be rich and I'll be famous and everyone will love me and I'll have no more problems, right? It wasn't that easy. I had to really work at it. But after a couple years of really working at it, I was able to come off disability. And let me tell you, that was a whole nother drama in and of itself. We could talk about that for 2 hours. I was terrified of coming off disability because I could have stayed on disability until the day I died. But I had to let it go. The way I would put it is a good principle for life. You ever been like going to the mall or something and you're hunting for a parking spot and, oh my gosh, I think I see one. And you pull up close and you go, oh crap, there's a motorcycle there.
Yeah.
Right? We've all done that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, here's the moral of this story. The motorcycle doesn't fill the entire parking spot, does it? But as long as it's there, you can't fit your car in. And that's where a lot of us are. That we hold on to a small version of ourselves and a small version of truth. Because it's familiar, it's comfortable, it's what we know, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's like the motorcycle that takes up the whole parking spot.
Yeah.
You can't fit a big truth in there as long as a small truth is already in the place, right?
Yeah.
But I was able to, again, with a lot of work, it was a lot of money, a lot of time. I was able to come off disability. I was able to start a company doing energy healing, just like Terry. I started teaching classes. I started making money. It wasn't like I was making millions of dollars, but within about 6 months, I was making 3 times more than I did on disability. Again, not a high bar, right? But for me, it was huge. So I got my own place. I got cats, which was huge for me psychologically, right?
Yeah.
I started to pay down my credit card debt. Again, that took about 3 years to do, but I pulled it off. I started exercising again. Because for a long time, especially when your arm's paralyzed, how are you going to exercise, right? You can't. You ever see someone with a paralyzed arm jogging on the side of the road? No. It throws your whole system out of whack, right? It's way too hard on the body. But I was able to start exercising again. I was able to start dating. And I was really able to, really re-engage my life. And I remember it was at the family Christmas party, a year or 2 after, Terry was there. And I remember my mother walked up to her with tears in her face and gave her a big hug and just said, thank you for giving my son his life back. So that was pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Now, that's just the first part of the journey. If I were to tell the rest of the story, we'd be here for another 3 hours. I won't do that to everyone, right? Let me just say, it wasn't quite as simple as Brent experienced a miracle and lived happily ever after.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of life drama that happened afterwards, a lot of loss, pain, tragedy, but also a lot of amazing things too. But I think the takeaway was that when I was so depressed in the 90s, I really didn't think there was anything that could help me. Because I had been through years and years of all sorts of treatments, right?
Mm-hmm.
I had an almost 6-figure credit card debt, and nothing made any difference. And then right when I was on the verge of giving up, the solution showed up. And you want to remember, I didn't know ahead of time it was going to work out, right? It's very easy when we study history. We already know how it worked out. The people living it didn't know that. They had no idea how it would go, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think a good historical analogy I like is when my arm was paralyzed, when things were really dark, I really didn't think there was any way out for me.
Yeah.
I figured either I would kill myself or I'd end up homeless and get stabbed and die in a street corner or something. It was terrifying.
Yeah.
And what I want to say is that it would have been very easy for me to not see Terry. As I told you the truth, my Aunt Lauren was her friend, tried for almost 6 months. Brent, go see Terry. Okay. And then I wouldn't, right? I didn't think anything would work for me, especially because I had done a little bit of hands-on healing, right? It's not like I had never done any energy healing.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that what I had done just seemed a boring waste of time. And again, I'm not slamming Reiki or anything. I think they're great modalities that help a lot of people, right? Same thing with acupuncture. Acupuncture did nothing for me.
Yeah. You tried all angles.
I had over 500 sessions of acupuncture. You believe that? I was going in 2 to 3 times a week for years. So, again, it wasn't like, oh, gee, I did it once and it didn't help. No, I did over and over and over. I found the best Chinese doctor in LA and I saw him 3 times a week for like 4 years. And nothing made a difference. And I want everyone to just think about, what would that have been like? I didn't know it was going to help me. Nothing did, right? Another crazy healer lady with some woo-woo technique, whatever, right? But I'm so happy that my aunt agreed to buy me dinner. Because that's what got me to go.
If the dinner wasn't in the deal, you wouldn't have went.
Yeah, I don't think I would have gone. And that's what I want people to know. I didn't know it was going to be a big miracle. I didn't know it could help me. And even when I did, I wasn't expecting a life-changing miracle that would give me a new career. I just wanted to have less pain so I could go back to work, be an engineer, right? And it would have been so easy for me to not go. And I don't even want to think about where my life would be. Yeah. Most likely I wouldn't be on the planet. And by extension, my son wouldn't be on the planet. So, just know, even if things are really dark, you never know for sure.
Yeah.
And I want to share something with you that I think your listeners will find really fascinating. People have asked me a lot. They go, Brent, you were such a skeptic, right? Such a scientist, such a nerd. Why did it work for you?
Good question.
And I think that's a good question, right? That I'm going to give a couple pieces to it, the best I understand it. First thing is, as a good scientist, I thought it was ridiculous that no good scientist could be an atheist. And I know I'm going against the grain of science here for a simple reason. An atheist is convinced there is not a God or a higher power. And any good scientist knows it's nearly impossible to prove a negative. How do you do that, right? It would be like if I asked you, can you prove to me that there are no intelligent aliens anywhere in the universe? You can't do that, can you? How do you do that? You would have to map and scan every planet, every moon, every large asteroid throughout the whole universe. That's impossible. No one can do that, right? That's what I mean by prove a negative. However, it's easy to prove a positive. You just need one example, right? So if we found life on Mars, there's our answer. Boom, it exists, right? So no good scientist should ever be an atheist, because we don't know. Instead, I was a confirmed agnostic. That's someone who goes, I'm not sure if there's a God or not. The data's not there, right? So part of it was, I was convinced that there might be a God. It's a short way of putting it, right? Maybe, very small probability, but not zero. The other thing was, I remember, I've always loved science, especially popular science. And I was teaching myself quantum physics when I was 12 years old. Because I was such a nerd, right? I used to take my bike and I would ride my bike several miles down to UC Irvine, which was a nearby university. And my mother was an alumnus there, so I had her library card. And I would go in and check out all the science books. So I had access to a university library when I was in 6th grade. And I had taught myself, the basics of mechanics and electromagnetism and quantum physics. I thought it was really fascinating, right? Here's why that matters. Well, in quantum physics, one of the things you learn is that everything is possible, just unlikely. That it's a very high bar to say something's impossible. So, for example, there is, based on quantum physics, I'm sitting here in Las Vegas as we're talking here. You could get a big computer and calculate there is some small but finite probability that every atom in my body spontaneously teleports to New York City. So I blink and sneeze hard and open my eyes and I'm in New York. But the probability is very small, right? Very, very small. That was the second piece that allowed me to experience a miracle. I knew enough about science, especially quantum mechanics, that I could say miracles are possible, they're just unlikely. Mm-hmm. That's a very different thing from saying they're impossible. And so again, I want to be clear. I didn't think it would help. I was convinced it wouldn't, right? I was just there to get a free dinner. And trust me, when you're living on disability and budgeting every penny, I ate a lot of rice, a lot of beans, a lot of potatoes, and a lot of cheap mac and cheese. That's how I survived, right? Mm-hmm. A dinner from a restaurant is like huge for free. Are you kidding me? That like makes my whole week's budget. So it was a big deal. But except for that free dinner, I never would have gone. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, really is.
And I honestly think it helps me that I wasn't expecting a miracle. Which on the surface doesn't make sense, right? It does when you open the hood, because when you have a big expectation and attachment, that shuts you down by creating resistance. If that makes sense?
Totally.
So I didn't have a lot of resistance to the miracle because I didn't have a lot of expectations. It's actually more difficult to heal someone that has a huge expectation. Not impossible, right? So for example, I've worked with a good number of clients who have cancer. When you have cancer, of course you want to get better, right? Of course you're going to have some expectation and attachment. That's natural and human. It's not wrong. It just makes the healing a little harder because we have to neutralize the resistance before it can occur.
Yeah.
So in a crazy way, because I didn't have a lot of expectation, my expectation was I waste an hour talking to this crazy lady about my feelings and then I get a free dinner. In other words, that's all I was there for, right?
Yeah.
I wasn't worried about, oh God, I have to get better. I have to experience a miracle. No, there was none of that. And though so crazily, I think that helped me.
Yeah, I understand that. The law of attraction, when there's resistance, we just kind of repel what we're wanting.
That's exactly right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so it was kind of funny that to continue just the narrative a little further, that I was transformed by this experience. It really was a freaking miracle, right? I had experienced magic. Wow. Part of me thought I can die now, right? As again, I had grown up with King Arthur and Lord of the Rings and Dungeons and Dragons, right? Star Trek, Star Wars. So I loved that stuff. And I experienced it for real. And I was so excited. I wanted to learn all I could. And I'll admit, Ed, I hope you laugh at me for this, because it's kind of funny, that when I first started into energy healing, I thought mastering healing would be easy. Why? I was arrogant. I came into it going, well, hell, I was valedictorian of the top public high school in the nation, National Merit Scholar. I didn't just go to MIT, I crushed MIT. It's a very rare thing, but I had straight A's across 6.5 years and 3 degrees. In course 6.3, what's often considered the most difficult, most competitive major. I won honors and awards and all this stuff, right? So I didn't just graduate. I was like head of my class. And then in tech, I created the world's very first 3-dimensional graphical MMORPG. Today we call them MOGs, games like World of Warcraft. But I created my game years ahead of when any of the big boys thought it was even possible. That my game Underlight was a full-fledged 3D MMORPG. And the first public release was January of 1997. World of Warcraft hadn't even started development yet. So I was way ahead of my time. So long story short, I thought healing, learning a bunch of woo-woo with a bunch of middle-aged women covered in crystals and moo-moos, this will be easy, right? No, it wasn't easy. I got my ass kicked. And the reason was simple. I was totally stuck in my head. Just how I was, right? But none of my teachers really could articulate or understand why it was hard for me. Because for Terry, it was very easy. She had a talent for it. She'd be like, close your eyes, call on the guardian angels. There they are. They give you a message. They sing you a song, tell them what they look like, right? All that kind of stuff. I remember when I did my first training with Terry, it was so funny that it was a 3-day weekend, right? Friday, Saturday, Sunday. By Sunday, I was hiding in the bathroom during the exercises because I felt so bad. I didn't want anyone to get stuck with me as their partner. And I remember Terry figured out I was missing, and I figured, oh, there's only like 4 men at this seminar. They'll never think to look for me in the men's room. Well, she sent in one of the guys and pulled me out of the men's room, right? And I remember doing the guardian angel exercise. This is my first seminar in summer 2003, right? And I sat down with my partner to read her guardian angels, and I just sat there. I got nothing. So I sat there for a couple of minutes, and I just looked up and said, I'm sorry, maybe you don't have guardian angels. I don't get anything. And the poor woman started to cry, right? Yeah. And I remember Terry came over. She's like, damn it, Brent, don't ever say that, right? But basically, I was terrible.
Mm-hmm.
And, 6 months, I took trainings over and over. I couldn't do it. I didn't know what was wrong with me. But then I had an inspiration. And this is, I think, what sets me apart from, doesn't make me better than other healers and teachers, just different. I decided I'm not going to learn this the way other people do. And I said, well, I don't have this natural talent for healing like Terry does, or intuition like some people do. But what I did have was a great background in education and science and engineering. And I decided, okay, I'm going to take my own route here. I'm going to reverse engineer the masters. And that's what I did. And that actually worked for me. And again, I underestimated the job at first. When I first started on this, I thought it would take me 3 months, maybe 6 months, right? Go to some seminars, do a bunch of private sessions, take lots of notes, go home, figure it all out. It took 10 years, the short version. So it took me 10 years to figure it out, but I did. And I just went to lots of trainings, did lots of sessions, read lots of books, programs, you name it, right? And little by little, I figured out what they were doing. So all these different master healers and gurus and sages and intuitives and shamans and things, I just took very, very detailed, careful notes. And over the course of years, I started to see the patterns emerge. So I'll just give one piece right now that's easy to talk about. What I found was nearly all of these paranormal phenomena, so instant healings, manifesting things into your life, intuitive readings, all that cool stuff, right? They were all strongly correlated to a theta brainwave, which I thought was so interesting. There was a great paper written by SRI, the Stanford Research Institute, on paranormal phenomena. This was like back in the 80s, I think. And that's exactly what they found. They're putting EEGs on people's heads. They go, yeah, when people have the intuition, the remote viewing, these experiences, their brains are consistently in a theta state. So that's the kind of details that I figured out. And I kind of, I took energy healing and intuition, law of attraction, and I did exactly what they taught me at MIT. I took it apart. I figured out how it worked. And I didn't just put it back together the way it was. I made it better. That's what they teach at MIT, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was always that way. I was always the weird one that wanted to know how it worked. I remember when I was in high school, my grandma gave me her old car, and she got a new one, which was great. But this thing was an absolute piece of junk, right? I got it with 70,000 miles on it. She had never even changed the oil. Ever. It's amazing it was running, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I was so excited to get the car. I then took auto shop every term for the rest of high school, and I tore that thing apart. And in auto shop, I could do it, right? I had the tools, I had the teacher, I had all the support I needed, and I tore that engine apart and put it back together. And it ran better afterwards. That's what I did with energy healing.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I like to tell people is, I'm an engineer, not a scientist. What does that mean? Well, scientists are the ones that discover the laws of the universe. And that's really important, right? Engineers turn them into technology. So, again, I'm playing a little fast and loose with the words, but you might say that Maxwell was a scientist and a mathematician. He's the one that figured out the laws of electromagnetism. We call them Maxwell's laws. He figured out exactly how electricity works. Edison was an engineer. He took what Maxwell had figured out and used that knowledge to create electric lights, a technology, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I'm an engineer, I'm an integrator. And in my process of awakening dynamics, I would say 80% of what you learned there, I did not invent. But I took other people's inventions, I evolved them, I integrated them and made them better. That's my role. And really what I have found is I see this all as technology. And I know that's an unusual view, right? But you look at what others will call the woo-woo aspects. Energy healing, right? Focused prayer, law of attraction, manifesting, intuition, angel readings, all this kind of stuff. I see it as technology.
And I love that point of view. For people who are technologically minded, this can speak to them.
Mm-hmm.
Because if we do speak about it like that, it is another angle of looking at things that is possible.
Yes, for sure. I'm just looking at the same thing through a different lens.
Mm-hmm.
I'll go out on a limb here and say it's like a Fourier transform. Take it from time domain to frequency domain. And if anyone listening knows what I'm saying, you need to be in my classes. I'm your teacher, right? Or else, little dog whistle, some advanced math. But you're looking at the same thing just through a different lens. And I don't think it's wrong to see it as woo-woo or magic. It's just a different way of looking at it, right?
Yeah.
Same thing, different perspective. So ultimately, what I see is it's consciousness technology.
Mm-hmm.
That we all have consciousness, don't we? Certainly the humans and the higher animals do, right?
Yeah.
People, cats, dogs, horses, dolphins, we all have consciousness. Just look in an animal's eyes. If we're talking bugs, that's kind of a different thing. But clearly the other mammals and things, there's consciousness. But most of us have no idea what consciousness is or how it works. And it sucks because it's so powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And the metaphor I like to use is electricity. That electricity has been around as long as the universe, right? It wasn't invented, it was discovered.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. Primitive people like cavemen, they were not stupid. Did you know science has proven cavemen were smarter than us? They had larger brains. They really were smarter than us. They just didn't have science or technology, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so if you pulled a caveman through a time machine and showed him your cell phone, he would think this was a miracle, or magic, or the devil, or an alien artifact, or something crazy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because the caveman doesn't know about science and technology. But my God, it can take a picture of you. It can record a video. It can do math. It can do all these things, right? Well, it all runs on electricity, doesn't it? But a caveman, they weren't stupid. They knew what electricity was. They could see a lightning bolt during a storm, right?
Mm-hmm.
Can't miss that, right? They could feel a static electric shock on a dry winter morning. So that's why I say they weren't stupid. They just didn't have technology.
Mm-hmm.
And for what? 250,000 years humans were on this planet. And then in the 19th century, we figured it out. Maxwell and Tesla and Edison and, all those luminaries. We figured out exactly what electricity is and how it works. And here's the thing, then we turned it into technology. The electric light bulb is the first obvious thing, right? Do you have any idea how much that changed the world? I mean, seriously, through all of human history, you had to burn a candle or whale oil or something to get light. Do you have any idea how many houses burned down because someone kicked over a candle? All the time. All the time. And all of a sudden, we have electric lights. You can stay up as long as you want. You can see outside at night. I mean, it was huge, right? And the technology has just advanced. Here we are, less than 200 years later, and our whole civilization runs on electricity. Right? Your phone runs on electricity, your computer, your microwave, your heat, your car even maybe. So in just a very short time, we've taken something from a total mystery to we've made it our tool. And that's kind of what I want to do with consciousness. That, again, primitive people recognized electricity, they just didn't know how it worked. And people today, we recognize consciousness, don't we? And I believe that our consciousness is the greatest and most powerful gift we've been given. But most of us have no idea how it works. And if you don't know how it works, you can't turn it into technology. But energy healing is just technology. We are reprogramming the subconscious mind. Intuition is just technology. That our brains and our bodies have a higher dimensional awareness. And those that cultivate that, we call it intuition. But it's a real thing. That someday we'll be able to put equations and math on it. Just like before Newton, the idea of describing motion mathematically seemed like a pipe dream. That's impossible. Well, then Newton did it, right? Same thing with electricity. To Benjamin Franklin, harnessing electricity to build machines would have seemed like an impossible dream. Then we did it. And I look at all the self-improvement and new age courses and healing and intuition, what I see is different levels of technology. And I like to talk about them in terms of 3 generations. In the same way we have 3G, 4G on your phone. With self-improvement and consciousness, there are 3 generations out there. The first generation is what I would call kind of your old school positive thinking, law of attraction. So Think and Grow Rich and The Secret and books like that, right? Vision boards, mantras, affirmations, masterminds. Think positively. Now, interesting, but did you know that the studies done on the law of attraction show that it has a 99% failure rate? That's pretty bad, right? So for every 100 people that go to the law of attraction seminar, 99 just wasted their time and money. 1 might get a shift. It's not 0, right? There are success stories. These things have happened, but they're rare. And I think teaching the old school law of attraction as a way to make money, you might as well buy lottery tickets. It's essentially what you're doing, right? If you get really lucky, it might work for you, but most people are disappointed. And so I'm not going to say it doesn't work. I would put it in the category, in engineering, we have a term, necessary but insufficient. So positive thinking and all that is necessary, right? An extremely negatively focused person will have a harder time manifesting. But just because you say your mantras and make a vision board is not a guarantee your life becomes a dream. You might get lucky, right? Just like you want to be rich, go buy a lottery ticket. Maybe you get lucky. But getting lucky is a terrible strategy, isn't it? You know you're in trouble when that's your best strategy. So that leads us to the second generation. And to me, this is where it gets interesting. This is a lot of energy healing. So the difference between the first and second generation is simple. The second generation technologies directly work with the subconscious mind. That's the difference. So when we get into the second generation, we start identifying and fixing bugs in the code, in the subconscious, just like software. Identify a trauma, clear it out, very much like software. And the second generation is very interesting because this is where medical miracles start to occur. This is where you get most of the stories of people that instantly healed from cancer. Or like I did, my elbow instantly healed.
Mm-hmm. Was it
Terry,
identifying a story that
yes,
captures
yes,
emotion?
that's exactly right. There's a narrative inside of us that's running our lives. And it's all coded, just like software. It's just a bunch of ones and zeros. And the second generation technologies allow you to look under the hood and start to directly change the subconscious. So good examples would be Psych K was an early one. Emotion code, healing codes, EFT, theta healing, things like this. There's dozens, if not hundreds or thousands of modalities that usually use muscle testing as a way to check for subconscious blocks, and then have some kind of healing process or tapping the body or movement, somatic therapy, or maybe a machine that generates a frequency to make this change. And the second generation, that's when we start to see some serious results. It's not 100%, but I'd say probably 20, 30% in terms of the first time I work with someone, having done like 22,000 sessions over 20 some years. I see that about maybe 1 in 5 people has a big experience in their first session. And so that's pretty good. It's still about 20%. So we can do better, but 20% miracles, that's cool, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot better than where we were before, right? Just go to another law of attraction seminar. Yeah. And so that was really exciting. And that's what I learned from Terry. And that carried me along well for about 5 years. And I won't get into the story now, but my life cratered again. And I got bailed out again when I met the man I consider my mentor, Carl Wolf. And I mention that because Carl introduced me to the third generation. And the difference is the second generation techniques are very language focused. Usually you're finding blocks or beliefs or statements of some kind, articulated through words and language. The third generation is more visceral, somatic. It's about movement. It's not about thinking in the head, it's about movement in the body. So the combination of physical movement, along with a very deep meditative entrainment, and the study of what I call deep spirituality. Things like Buddhist philosophy, Advaita Vedanta, non-duality, aiming us towards that non-dual awareness. That's the third generation. And it's not inherently better, it's just a different kind of tool. That the second gen techs, belief work and subconscious clearing, I think are really powerful, especially for physical and emotional healing. So if me or someone in my family got sick, that's what I would apply first. The third generation techniques have a steeper learning curve. It's harder to understand it, and it made no sense to me when I did it. It took me years to figure it out. But it can do things nothing else can. And especially in terms of presence, charisma, and sort of the size of your life. The way I would describe it is the first generation stuff, typical law of attraction, leaves you in your subconscious mind as is and tries to create positivity from the conscious mind. Again, not wrong, it just doesn't work for most people. Why? The conscious mind just isn't powerful enough. Are you capable of picking up a 10,000 pound truck? Probably not, right? There's nothing wrong with you, you're just not big enough. I don't think any human could pick up a 10,000 pound truck, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's just certain jobs it can't do. The second generation, you start changing the subconscious. So it changes the subconscious, but the you on the inside stays the same. We're just tweaking your code a little bit, right? Like if you were allergic to cats, 90% likely, I work with you for 10 minutes, you'll never be allergic to cats again. So that's cool, right? We change the way your body runs, but the you up here running the show is not changed. It's the same. And that's what happened when I worked with Terry for 5 years. I saw a lot of benefits to it, right? I had less pain. I could move more, started working, exercise, and dating. So that was amazing. But it was the same me on the inside. the third gen work changes the you. It's a fundamental shift, and it is a little scary and uncomfortable because the ego loves to grab on and hold on to what's comfortable and familiar.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're willing to face your own shadow and be uncomfortable, that's where most of the power is. Then we talked about resistance at the beginning. What Carl taught, and I found to be true, he said, most people piss away over 90% of their power and creative ability via resistance. So if you really, really want to make money, you're likely spending most of that power reinforcing your condition because you're resisting being poor, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that gets us stuck. And to get past that, to dissolve attachment, requires changing the you on the inside.
Or revealing the you that's already been there.
Sure. It's same thing, right?
Yeah.
And I think the way you put it is more correct. The same you, the real you, has always been trapped in there.
Mm-hmm.
It's just got layers and layers on top of it. And the goal with the higher level work is to peel away those layers.
Mm-hmm.
But again, that's why I say it has a steeper learning curve.
Yeah.
It can take longer to get results because there is some training and foundation we have to create first. If that makes sense.
Absolutely.
I would say that using the first and second gen tools is relatively easy for most people. You'll be going in 5-10 minutes. Doesn't take long. It's kind of like learning to drive a passenger car. Most of us learn to drive cars, right? Is it hard? Not really. It just takes time to get comfortable with it, right? The third gen tools are like a race car. That just because you can drive your Toyota around town does not mean you're ready to take an F1 race car on the track. It's a much higher level skill of driving just to use the race car at all, right? Most regular drivers, you put them in an F1 race car, they'd blow the engine. They don't know how to drive it right. But here's the thing. You can't take an untrained person that's never been in a car and just teach them to drive a race car. You teach them to drive a Toyota first, right? Then once you get comfortable with that, then we'll show you how to work the race car. And that's exactly, literally, that's how I learned to race. When I was young, me and my buddy, my best friend, we both really wanted to be better drivers. We went to racing school. And they taught us this is how you drive a race car, right? And it is more technical and complicated. But here's the thing, you can go a lot faster. So the third gen tools are like that. They do have a steeper learning curve. It seems weird at first. It doesn't make a lot of sense. And it's the crazy thing that when I met Carl, when I had my first session with him, I had been a full-time energy healing practitioner professionally for 5 years. So it's not like I was new to the woo-woo world, right?
Yeah.
I had certifications in like 27 different modalities, right? I had learned Reiki healing and pranic healing, and I learned Psych K, and I learned, all matrix energetics and all this stuff. So I thought I had known it all and done it all. But when I met Carl, I was like, who are you and what the heck are you doing? It looks so different, right? But, over time, I got to see, wow, this is where the greatest power is. And so what I do nowadays is really a blend of them. That if there was just one technique or process that was inherently superior to everything else, I would just do that. But here's the thing, there's not. And every teacher out there seems to think that their thing is the one be all, one size fits all to everything. No, it's not that simple. Anyone that tells you only do my thing, everything else is crap, don't run from the room. They're just trying to take your money.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know what they're doing. They really don't. So the way I would describe it now is, all three generations, all the different technologies are useful and have a place. It just depends on the job that needs to be done, right?
Yeah.
The metaphor I use a lot is it's like modes of transportation. That I can walk around, right? I can also drive my car. Or I could buy a ticket on an airline. I live in Las Vegas. If I wanted to go to Tokyo, There's not just one mode of transportation that takes me from my living room to Tokyo, is there? But here's what I can do. I can walk to my car, drive to the airport, and then fly over the ocean in an airplane. That'll work, won't it?
Mm-hmm.
Notice we need 3 modes of transportation. And most people's lives are like that. That there's probably not one technique or process or a concept that's going to solve your life and make it perfect. For most people, you need a bunch of different tools. Imagine if you're building a house and you have a hammer. Well, that's great if you're pounding in nails, isn't it? I'd love to see you cut a board with that hammer. Good luck, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of what I want to offer to people is I have a different approach. I think it's better, but it's not the best for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
In that it is a little more technical, a little more step-by-step, a little more rational thought. So I get a lot of people in my community that are a little nerdier, a little more head cases. A lot of them have science engineering backgrounds. Not everyone, right? Not everyone. But they like to understand things. They like it to make sense. And that's what I would say. Hey, you know what? If you want to get to where you want to be, I would love to help you get there. I see myself kind of like a lighthouse.
Mm-hmm.
A lighthouse doesn't control the ocean, does it? A lighthouse doesn't control the ships. The lighthouse just shows them the map.
Yeah.
Right? So ship coming on shore, they see the lighthouse, they know exactly where the shore is. That's important.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't, ships sink, people die. And my goal is to be your lighthouse. I think I can help you get from where you were to where you want to be a lot faster with a lot less hassle than trying to figure it out on your own.
Mm-hmm.
And, I'll finish with, I remember there's one of the lessons from MIT in grad school that really stuck with me. What they told us is that there's 2 ways people learn things. One is from learning from your own mistakes. The other is learning from someone else's mistakes. And they both work. So some people insist on going and making all their own mistakes. Okay, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just, that's going to be a longer journey and it's going to be a lot more painful.
Mm-hmm.
But you can do it, right? And that's what I want to say to people. If you think you're going to totally change your life by watching free social media videos, you're going to be waiting for a really long time. It's not that easy, right?
No.
No, it's really not. At some point, you have to pick a teacher and a system and go do the work.
Yeah.
So imagine that you wanted to learn karate. So all you did was watch TikTok videos on karate. Maybe you read a book on karate. What's going to happen when you join a tournament? You're going to get flattened. I guarantee, right? You may get hurt.
Yeah.
Why? You have knowledge in your head, but it's not embodied. If you want to learn karate, again, find a dojo. You need a teacher and a community and a place to train. And go to the class over and over and over. And practice what they teach you. It's that simple. At my dojo, they have a saying. Do you know what the difference is between a white belt and a black belt?
No.
It's how many classes you've taken.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
That's literally it. And that's why I want to reiterate for everyone that, that getting to your goal in life is like getting a black belt. Whether it's healing your body, making money, finding love, sense of purpose, again, insert whatever your thing is here. You can do it. Mm-hmm. But you're not going to do it sitting at home watching TikTok. You got to go take action, work with people that know what they're doing, right?
Yeah.
Not forever, just for a while. Mm-hmm. Just like if I may be at my dojo for 5 or 10 years. At some point, I may learn everything I can from them and go start my own school or try a new style, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's not forever. But that's the big mistake I think people make.
Yeah.
There's so much low quality free content on social media that they don't go deeper than that. So just know, I don't know anyone that's lone wolfed it and achieved a high level of success. And I've worked with like 27,000 people, right? A lot of people. And again, I'm not the right teacher for everyone. I'm intense. I think fast. I talk fast. I have very little patience for idiocy.
Yeah.
And I'm not opposed to new age fluff. I just see it as irrelevant filler.
Mhm.
So, what I'll say is, if you're looking for someone that's just going to give you a big hug and tell you it's okay, don't call me. Not that I don't want to do that, but that's not my thing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Right? When my toilet's backed up, do I call my dentist? No. I mean, maybe he could help. He'd go, Brent, why are you calling me? Call a plumber, you moron, right? Exactly. That's my point. I'm about people who are action oriented that want to solve the problem at the source, which again requires courage because you have to face your own darkness. It will likely be uncomfortable. But that's the point, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But I like the karate black belt metaphor because here's a fact. Every single person listening right now, if you really wanted a black belt, you could get one. You just have to go to a school and start training. Everyone does, right?
Mhm.
Every martial arts school on the planet, one of two things happens. Either you keep training until you get your black belt, or you quit before you get there.
Mhm.
And healing, transforming our lives is the same.
Yeah.
You can get there. Everyone does.
Mhm.
You just have to stick with it long enough, right?
And keep, I suppose, a short-term vision rather than such a long-term vision. I think that kind of jeopardizes people as well. When they have such like a big goal, they kind
Yeah.
of they kind of lose it. So it's like small baby steps, small goals, and short-term.
Yeah, that's a common mistake people make with manifesting is
Yeah.
it turns into a fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
If you pick something that's so far divorced from your current life that it seems unreal, you're probably wasting your time.
Mm-hmm.
A good example would be Jim Carrey, the actor. I love his newer work. His philosophy, I think, is amazing. But true story, when he was an up-and-coming actor in the 90s, and he talks about this, he wrote himself a check that was $10 million that sat on the memo line for acting services. And that was, I think, Thanksgiving of 94-ish. And then he kind of forgot about it. Within 2 years, he had received a $10 million check for acting.
Mm-hmm.
And I mention that because it's not like Jim Carrey was sitting in his underwear drinking beer and playing Xbox all day, just expecting money to show up. No, he was out there hustling as an actor, right?
Yeah.
Proving his craft, doing auditions, doing roles where he could. I'm not an actor, but he was doing actor stuff all the time. That's what I want everyone to hear. You have to do the practice. You have to show up, right?
Yeah.
And it worked for him.
Mhm.
So for everyone listening, it can work for you too.
Totally.
You just have to find the right teacher and the right community to support you.
And speaking of that, if somebody did want to contact you, how would they find you?
Easiest way is you can go to my website at awakeningdynamics.com.
Mhm.
And that has a little overview of kind of different programs I have available, a little more to know about it. So if you're interested in taking action and checking this work out, go to my website.
Mhm.
I would love to talk to you, see if you're a good fit for the community. Because really that's the most important thing for me. I want to bring the right people into the community.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because over time, that's the most important thing, right? I'm not looking for numbers. I used to want to shove everyone in my community. Now I go, no, not everyone's a good fit.
Mhm.
For people who just want to learn more, if you're curious, but yeah, whatever, I don't know, I need to know more, great, no problem. And just go to YouTube, type in my name, Brent Micheal Philips. My channel should come right up. So for those that want to learn more first, go crazy. I got 200 different videos. I'll keep you busy for a while just on my YouTube channel.
Mhm.
And if you think this is the right fit, if this is the right approach, get in touch. That I'm offering a special. I don't know how long I can offer this because it's a lot of my time, but for anyone that is serious about this, in other words, you're willing to spend time and money and focus, right? I'll talk to you for free just to see if you're a good fit. And you'll just see a big button right on my website that says something like podcast special. And I'll ask, only do it if you're serious, right?
Mhm.
If you just want to serve free content, go to YouTube. No problem, right? Go crazy. But if you want to go deeper, see some miracles for yourself, talk to me, and I'm going to do one of two things for you. Either, if you're a good fit, I'll give you a specific recommendation for what program I think is the best fit. And again, I'm very different from most people. I don't just have one thing I drop everyone into, right?
Yeah.
Most people doing this work, they have one thing. This is my mastermind. Everyone goes here, right? I don't do that. I see everyone as unique. There's no one solution for everyone. So every solution I offer is custom to that person.
Mm-hmm.
Always. So either I'll say, hey, you're a good fit. This is how I think you should start. Or I will say you're not a good fit. And I'll try to recommend something that I think is a better fit.
Yeah.
So it'd be like, if you have some 19-year-old steroid monster that wants to break people in half, don't let him into the kids' class. That's not a good fit, right?
Yeah.
He should be an MMA fighter. That's what they do, right? They try to tear each other in half. That's fine, just not what I'm looking for. And that's why I say that every healer community is different. And the most important thing over the long run is finding a good fit.
Yeah.
Because if you get in with people you like, that support you, that you enjoy being around, you're going to keep showing up, aren't you?
Definitely.
And it's just a matter of time before you get your black belt.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I want. I want to turn people into spiritual black belts.
Yeah.
But not everyone's a good fit for me, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah. One thing Carl taught me, he was so right. He said, you have one wrong person in your group, it can take the whole thing out.
That is true.
And anyone who's been a seminar leader knows that.
Mm-hmm.
You just need one disruptive person at the seminar and it sucks the air out of the whole room.
Yeah.
It becomes so much more difficult to deliver a good experience,
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I'm here for. Again, I just want to be your lighthouse. I've made a lot of mistakes. Oh my gosh. If you all want to go make all your own mistakes, go crazy. I will not stand in your way, right? Just let me know when you're sick of it. When you're done making your own mistakes and you want to learn from others, that's why I'm here.
Yeah.
But go exhaust yourself, bang your head against the wall. I wish I had found energy healing in 1996 when I first started to have pain. I didn't. I didn't find the right person and style for 7 years. So that's, I kind of see them as my years in the wilderness.
Mm-hmm.
So, for people that think they can do it all on free TikTok videos, go crazy. I'm pretty confident at some point you realize you can't.
Mm-hmm.
And I know everyone is using social media and AI for everything, right? I think it's going to be a while before AI replaces a trained spiritual teacher.
Yeah. Or if it ever happens.
If it ever happens, Admittedly, there are certain things AI is very good at, and I love AI for that. But it's not a be-all, end-all.
Mm-hmm.
We still need humans in the loop, at least today.
Especially with our own technology.
Yeah, especially with our inner technology.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yes. Brent, I really appreciate your vulnerability. Your story's been so hopeful, inspirational, motivational, and I cannot wait to launch it to show everybody another approach to our own energetic way of being.
Yeah, and that's what I love about being here is we're just all giving you different versions of the same thing.
Yeah, and I love that.
It's be like you're setting out a huge buffet.
Mm-hmm. Everyone
gets to try a little bit of everything, see what they like, right?
Totally.
Then once you know what you like, order that. Exactly.
Well, thank you so much, Brent. I hope you have a lovely week.
Excited to be here. It's been awesome.
Keep in touch.
Oh, of course.
Thank you for your time. Take care.